Thank you.
Well, I'm not sure you're going to need all those socks, Stani.
Yeah, it's so does anyone has any Go? Who minted Go? Here, oh, let's go. Who else? Who minted Go? Where? Oh, who else? Oh, we have there a winner. Oh, you get a one, yeah, for that. Oh, okay, the last one. Okay, you have to fight for this one. Okay, here we go.
Fight.
Nice shirt. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for coming. I'm really excited about this talk. We have no one less than the legend, the visionary Stani here, not only co-founder of Aave, but also Lens and more. So first things first, huge congratulations. I'm not sure if those of you who've been traveling have been under a rock and not on your Lens feeds and your crypto Twitter feeds, but Go is now live on mainnet.
Woo!
Since I think about 24 hours, right?
Yeah, less than that, I think, or give or take.
Fantastic. Congratulations. And I think the Go Curve USD pool is up and running. So go for it, as they say. So we're here to talk about stablecoins and the Web3 payment layer. Obviously, we're going to talk about Go. And we really want to dig into the mechanics of that, what your motivation for that was. But let's just contextualize a little bit. I mean, no one here needs reminding that stablecoins are the backbone of DeFi. And potentially not only. I mean, there is also bridges into TradFi, institutional investments, and Web2 payments infrastructures. The global digital payments market is estimated to be $20 trillion by 2026, just to give you a sense of the scale of these markets. And we all know the inefficiencies in those markets at the moment. So this is an incredibly important space. Thanks also to the sponsors of this conference for getting us to talk about it. So, Stani, I'd like to start with your motivation for Go and the role of stablecoins in the DeFi ecosystem more broadly.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that what we built in DeFi for the past years is quite incredible, mainly because the reason we in the first place started to build Aave is that we wanted to build basically access to financial participation, social participation, and effectively what's fascinating about blockchain is that it's a neutral technology that allows people to participate and then also govern and coordinate things that are important for them. And from that kind of ethos, we built the Aave protocol, which became quite substantially significant protocol. So Aave currently has roughly 6 billion worth of assets in the smart contracts that people are actually trusting, and it provides access to that participation. Now, when we're looking at for example, the whole DeFi ecosystem, so we started to build with blockchain first financial solutions. So Bitcoin in the first place wanted to solve peer-to-peer payments. So how do we actually settle transactions in a coffee shop, in an event, or online, for example? And ironically, it never was able to solve that because of the cost of transacting that network. But with Ethereum, we actually received programmable finance. So we will be able, the first time, build different kinds of applications, financial applications that anyone has access, but also program them in a way that they're very efficient and you don't necessarily need to trust. And now, looking back in decentralized finance, we really have a quite solid backbone infrastructure that many of you all here are actually building as well now and using. I assume you all, at least half of you are degens using DeFi. So, but regarding to Go, what's important is that we really think that it's a time for having more diversity in the stablecoin ecosystem, but also pushing that vision forward. So if we have a way of actually borrowing value against your cryptographic assets that you might have or swap value from one to another in a decentralized way, in a non-custodial way, why don't we have ability now to actually settle transactions and actually pay with more transparent, decentralized currencies and infrastructure? And so the bigger kind of a thing is that Go has a lot of technical improvements. It has a lot of things that helps the community to grow, the Aave community. But what's more important is the vision. So how we actually push ourselves more towards building new experiences and enabling this exciting infrastructure that we've been building over the years and making it available to wider public. So how we can make this public good infrastructure that we build usable on an everyday basis. And that's the vision of Go.
So let's dig into that while we're here. I'd like to come back on later to a little bit contextualizing how that sits into the broader stablecoin ecosystem. But what are those mechanics, and was it modeled on another kind of stablecoin, and what are the unique characteristics of Go that we didn't have before and Go is now fulfilling?
Yeah, we did look the whole space on what's available, and we were in a quite lucky position where we already saw existing infrastructure that we can actually take a lot of inspiration, and it's part of DeFi. So the idea is that we all build in public and we build open way, and we can actually take inspiration and build additional value. Something that was very important for Go is that we were able to build an infrastructure which is able to cater different kinds of ways to mint Go. The most organic and natural way was first to mint Go against the Aave, the assets that users are supplying into the Aave market. First of all, because that's the basis of the Aave ecosystem, the main protocol. And then have flexibility to actually add different kinds of ways to mint Go for future use cases. And we call those facilitators. So facilitators are effectively policies that can mint Go up to certain bucket size. And the first facilitator, the minting Go into the Aave protocol, is up to 100 million cap. And then there's another facilitator to flash mint Go as well, which helps arbitrage and so forth. But that's just basically the step one. And the next step is to figure out how else you can mint Go in a safe, resilient way where you don't damage the infrastructure. So that flexibility is what we wanted to do there. And obviously for user perspective, what's interesting about the first facilitator is that you can earn on the collaterals that you're supplying into the Aave protocol and mint Go, so you can reduce the actual net borrowing rate that you might have. But it's one thing I want to mention is that because Aave protocol is quite big at this point, it also kind of limits how much you can innovate. And I like what Vitalik said actually last year's ETC is that when you are thinking about innovation on Ethereum, you have to kind of like go slowly, and Ethereum should be the boring network, and then all the innovation should happen in L2s. So kind of have a similar feeling about Aave, where there's so much you can actually innovate, and you have to scope it down to the main core thing that is applicable, scalable, and also somehow battle tested.
I think that's the thing, is sort of go slowly but very fast. So and the key point there is resilience, right? So maybe you can tell us a little more, as I understand it, those of us who've been staking in the Aave safety module, hands up, who's doing that?
Those are like real chats.
There are some special features for those.
Do you have more socks or?
Right, exactly. If you want socks, you've got to be staking. So tell us about the special features of those of us who are staking in the safety module.
Yeah, I mean, one interesting thing is that obviously with the safety module, the idea has been that it's a way to backstop the risk as a community member of the Aave protocol if there's some sort of a shortfall event. Something we wanted to test out is that you have a discount rate when you actually mint Go. So when you're borrowing from the Aave protocol, if you have already a staking position. That's actually some innovation that we wanted to try out and see how does the pricing actually work when you start staking Aave and Mint Go. It's basically a little experimentation we created, and we're just like interested to see like how it will affect actually the net rates of Mint and Go.
I think that's a really interesting innovation, and again, I think that lends towards, it incentivizes the resilience of the overall protocol, right? So I think that's very exciting.
I think it's quite a lot about the feedback loop. So in the Aave protocol, back when we were thinking about Aavenomics and what are the feedback loops that we want to have, one of the things that came to our minds constantly is that how we can decrease or increase the security and decrease the risk of the protocol or transfer the risk. And as early as DeFi was, back in those days, maybe tens of millions, the biggest protocols is very small compared to today's numbers. But we wanted to create a feedback loop where as more as the protocol grows, there is more kind of tendency to actually stake and backstop the protocol. And you can innovate from there as well. So it's a basis. And one of the most beautiful things about the Aave protocol and Aave community is that it's governed by the Aave DAO. So whatever we have created and to what scope, that can be extended or changed by the Aave community. And we actually want that to happen. So we want innovation to come as well from the community as well. And I think that's the power of having a public good that is governed by the community.
So, and who are the potential users? I mean, are you targeting institutional users for this?
Yeah, I think the user base of Go is very similar to the user base of DeFi. We have different kind of perception how a DeFi user looks like. For some, it might be a Twitter or Lens account with a Pepe frog and in the as a profile picture. But there are actually a lot of people who are involved in finance on a day-to-day basis, but they might be enthusiastic about decentralized finance and using it because it is the future. I mean, it's fair to say it's the future because even it works better. And I usually try to say to everyone that it's not about only DeFi, but we're just building better, faster, stronger finance. And eventually it's just going to be finance. And I see like DeFi being a bit of a mixed breed of different users. It's kind of like a jungle at this point. And probably it will be for a while, but more over time, we see more and more institutional involvement. We already see some institutions being involved in DeFi, supplying liquidity, minting other stablecoins. So over time, that just will expand. And even last year, we did a very big experimentation with JP Morgan in the Project Guardian, where first time ever they deployed the Aave protocol, the Aave Arc, the permission version, into a permissionless network. And for them, that was huge because they were never using a permissionless network before. So there's the steps that are happening over time and waves where more institutional excitement will pile up. But I think for now, it's quite a lot the common user. But nevertheless, I think what we're envisioning and going after more is closing the loop. So if we have this interesting infrastructure, how do we get the everyday users? How do we build experiences where stablecoins become a norm? And just to give an example, online payments wasn't a thing until there was something to buy online, right? So the thing about internet is that it gave access to information. You didn't need to go to your parents or your friends or to school or to library. Remember when you had to walk into a library to understand and learn something? So that's not a reality anymore. And the second thing is that when you're able to start a bookshop and sell your books across globally, you have access to new audience. And then we started to see credit card providers online. We started to see Stripe, and there was a time when people were afraid to put their credit card details in an online form, and Stripe made that easier. PayPal as well. So we need that kind of a moment for Go and DeFi as well, where it becomes a norm and easy in terms of the experience to actually do that. And one of the challenges is that we don't really have all the talent we need to build some of these experiences. A lot of the DeFi ecosystem, and I kind of fell into the trap as well, is that we build a lot of infrastructure and the backends, and we build a lot of good technology, but it requires good designers, good product people to come and also build that kind of like a gap into more consumer.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think that the UI UX is famously difficult. And, maybe some of the recent innovations and things like account abstraction may help with some of that. But just to go back, actually, I was just looking, allegedly the first digital payment, non-Web3 obviously, was in 1994, which apparently was a pizza from Pizza Hut. I bet nobody knew that. And that's obviously funny because the price of the Bitcoin pizza is now $300 million today, just so you know, $19 million a slice. So, but let's just go back to contextualizing that in the context of where we've come from the traditional digital payments infrastructure towards Web3 payment, right? And how stablecoins fit into that ecosystem, because there's kind of a spectrum of stablecoins, right? Depending on how you define it. And obviously at one end, there's a very decentralized one like Go. And at the other end, we have, potentially CBDCs. Increasingly, people are talking about tokenized deposits, as in bank deposits. And there's quite a lot of movement in that space, as well as you say, some kind of cross-trad Web3 infrastructure experiments. You may also know that SAP, for example, is testing USDC on Gurley at the moment. So, there's quite a lot of interaction that I don't think we should be afraid of. But if we can design the right kind of decentralized infrastructure that is delivering the things that Web 2 couldn't do, composability, programmability, as well as decentralization, then I think we're onto something. But so how do you see that fitting into the TradFi infrastructure in the longer term?
It's a good question, because there's different kinds of takes of like how the technology gets adopted, but I personally think it's always pretty much always it will be through the people, and it's I don't think like it's not only about like, let's say, about stablecoins or the blockchain or AI or any other technology. I think once you build something very valuable that people want, I mean, everyone keeps hearing it. Everyone who is a founder probably thinks a lot about like how to build things that people want. But that's how simple it is. So if there's enough actually demand for something, things will radically change around that. So let's take an example of Uber. In many of the countries where Uber came, including Finland, where I'm from, there was a lot of legislation or ruling about that, Uber should be forbidden. But there's so much demand, and that's became a social behavior. So if using something like stablecoins that are some way providing you a better optionality, better choice, and better access, and they work better than the current system, there's going to be demand, and that's going to become a social behavior. And when that happens, then the infrastructures will change and things have to adopt. The most scariest part is when you are still in the verge with many of the current technologies, with the blockchain and with the AI as well, is that if it doesn't have the full penetration yet, you have a lot of regulatory discussions of whether this is good or evil, and what is the technology that we're dealing with. And everyone who is an innovator and a technologist knows pretty well is that if you're working on technology, in most cases, it produces more benefit than harm. And if that difference is significant, it means then that it's viable technology to use. Same goes to cars, airplanes, internet, pretty much everything that we've built. And in my opinion, when we go towards that direction where we build something fascinating and useful, then we have adoption. So we're kind of in a silly way in probably like 90s of the internet where we were still building infrastructure, the ability to connect into the internet and do first things first. And the app economy came later with, for example, more infrastructure. So for example, iPhone and App Store provided the infrastructure to build experiences. So you have this app economy, that you have Facebooks and Ubers and whatnot. So it's more about, now that we build all this infrastructure, it's available, Go is on mainnet, for example, how we can actually build the experiences. And as you said, that's the hardest part, because in my opinion, it's relatively safe to build infrastructure. Like, it can go wrong. Maybe there's better ways to build a better infrastructure. But if something is missing and you build a bridge, it's a bridge. It can be better or worse. But they're actually building something that people really want, get engaged, and find it very valuable. That's the hardest part. But also the exciting part. So this is why I say always that I'm more excited about decentralized finance than I'm ever before, because finally we have the infrastructure to build all those experiences, and it's going to be your brands that you're going to create that the consumers will see. They will probably see necessarily like Aave protocol that can be like backend infrastructure, but the consumer-facing applications are going to be very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, but I guess, so if people want it, if you build it, then, they will come, right? So if it's useful, people will use it. There's a little bit of a break on that, though, right? Because the regulatory and the legal infrastructure is, let's say, emergent at best. And obviously, that's geographically divergent. Do you think, MiCA is providing a particular environment in which that kind of innovation can thrive, and other markets, US in particular, are a hindrance to that kind of development? I mean, even if people want it, even if we can build it and innovate, that we are handicapped in some way against the other kind of varieties of centralized stablecoins going as far as, state-issued CBDCs and so on. How do we think about that?
Well, I first and foremost believe always that users should have choice. So in my opinion, there should be decentralized stablecoins. There should be something that is less decentralized, more decentralized. Some shittier versions of stablecoins and CBDCs. I think there should be that choice. But like, when it comes to what gets most adopted, I think in a free world where you actually have this choice, because now we don't really have a choice for money, right? So if we want to go and pay, we have to use a dollar or euro here, or pounds in UK where I'm living now. So there isn't much a choice to choose your money and what you wanted to sell transactions. And it wasn't this way. I mean, hundreds of years ago, you had more choice. You could use salt, you could use gold, you have all these different items, but it made trade more complex, obviously. So I do think that everything should exist, and giving the choice for the users, and by giving that choice, they will select the experiences or the infrastructure that is aligning with their value. And then I do think that it's quite challenging at this point from regulatory perspective, obviously, but also I do see that there's a lot of positive effects as well. I see MiCA, for example, as a positive evolvement for crypto. I think it's nice if there's regulation, maybe because more people will be building. Maybe there's less risk for developers to innovate. So I do see a lot of value if there is clarity. But when it comes to like what people will actually use, I think if there's the freedom of choice, I think just something that is decentralized will always win, because it just has so many upside. Will people care about decentralization? No, but will they care about that you can actually move your assets very quickly, you have transparency, and you have other programmable benefits and openness. So I think even like maybe the biggest thing out of the whole DeFi kind of like a culture is the movement of open source, that we've been able to create an like an ecosystem where everyone is building openly, and because of that, and no one is holding patents over their inventions, we're able to build faster and innovate faster, and that results into just better finance and better whatever blockchain is used for. And I think that might be the actual game changer, is that because we are able to freely build, we're able to actually build better things than as we will be if we will build in a traditional way.
Yeah, absolutely. And building in an open source environment is obviously combative, right? So, that also increases resilience. But also, I mean, Go is obviously over collateralized, right? Is there any future for algo stablecoins?
I think it's kind of challenging because I think it boils down to economical design, and the name algo stablecoin is kind of like ruined, because I could imagine that we always subscribe to some sort of algorithms all the time, and they can be good and bad. But it seems that the algorithmic stablecoins, or whatever was created, let's say the example of Terra, that wasn't a good algorithm. It was a bad one. And I think that's what kind of like creates a bit of stigma. But I could imagine there's different ways of creating. And if you have that safe space to innovate, and that sandbox, in my opinion, should be like a girly testnet. I think that's the best way to try and test different things. I think it's definitely not a time to test in production, because the stakes are very high, and protecting DeFi reputation and the innovation culture also requires that we're innovating in a very responsible way, and that's what's very important.
Well, Amay, thank you so much. We're out of time, actually, but congratulations on Go. Very excited to do some minting later. And I only just discovered, by the way, that Aave actually means ghost in Finnish. Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, okay, well, now I know, and now you all know. Thank you so much, Stani. Fantastic to have a chat. I think we have a few minutes for questions.
Yeah, if you have a question, raise your hand, and I'll give you the mic.
Back there.
Hello. So this is a question about the DEX you plan to deploy the liquidity for GHO, because we already all know that Curve is a very good place for stablecoin, and there is already a CRV USD GHO pool that has been created. But we also know that Balancer is a very friendly space for Aave with the boosted pool program and stuff like that. So don't you feel like it will be more natural for Aave to deploy GHO liquidity on Balancer or Curve?
Well, it's an interesting question, because end of the day, like who is Aave? End of the day, like the way I see it is that because it's a DAO, anyone can go and propose these different kinds of pools into the DAO, and also create some sort of incentives. But also, my understanding is that these pools are permissionless, so probably people will create them and liquidity goes where. That's the thing about open systems. The liquidity goes where it's more efficient, or incentivized, or there's some sort of innovation there. So I don't know what will be the best answer for that question, but I will say that it's interesting to see what people will create in terms of pools and where the liquidity goes. I don't have any preference. I personally try to stay out of the governance and focus on innovation.
Any more questions?
Yes. Yeah. Stani, can you, in 3 points, compare to MakerDAO DAI or Curve USD? How do you position Go?
Yeah, the way I see it is Go is more of a native stablecoin into the within the Aave ecosystem. And it's more kind of oriented to the user behavior and bringing some benefits there, which is basically the fact that you can earn on your collaterals and use your whole kind of like positions that you have to mint Go. But also the structure is quite interesting, because with the facilitators, you can pretty much onboard different kinds of ways to mint Go. But it's fascinating because what differentiates Go quite a lot is that with the first facilitator, you can mint Go directly to the Aave pool. So traditionally, we've always seen that there is kind of like a stablecoin protocol that mints stablecoins, and then they're supplied into these secondary markets. More recently, even like with D3M that we created work together with the MakerDAO community, even pre-minting it against the A tokens. So that's a kind of interesting part. But down the line, where like this is like I want to highlight that this is like a genesis. So wherever Go goes, it's up to you and up to the community where to build and what kind of facilitators to bring. I know there's already a couple of people approached about facilitators, so like I think that's an exciting thing to follow. And in terms of vision, we really want to push forward, getting actually Go into exciting experiences. So that's something we're hoping quite a lot to happen.
Any more questions? Do we have time for more? One more.
Stani, you implied that there is still a place for algorithmic stablecoins, good ones, not the ones that don't work. What do you see as a role they play or the advantage they would have over or to complement existing stablecoins or collateralized stablecoins?
You mean like under-collateralized or?
By algorithmic, under-collateralized or non-collateralized?
What was the question? I couldn't hear in the beginning.
So you implied that there's still a place for algorithmic stablecoins, assuming that the algorithm actually works. Where do you think they would add value to complement or add to the current ecosystem?
Yeah, so by algorithm, I mean like more of like every stablecoin has a policy how a stablecoin is minted. So that policy can be anything, right? And some of these policies can be very good. Some of them are very bad. So those that are bad, they will not go anywhere. But in terms of like end of the day, I think there's room for innovate, obviously. And if there's something that improves the ecosystem, it's exciting. I personally think like if there's stablecoin innovation, it has to be also slightly a bit more radical and experimentational with in a safe sandbox that could help actually users eventually. So, I mean, it's all about innovation and the theory has to work.
I think we're out of time. Thank you so much, Stani. Great to chat. We could talk
Thank
all
you.
day. Thank you.
And stick around for the last talk, which is a panel. Bianca's going to be moderating. It's about censorship resistance, and we've got folks from a bunch of awesome protocols, including Liquidity, Frax, Raft, and Cheeto.